G'day students, thanks for joining me, and I have as my very special guest today Louise Glanville, who is the CEO of Victoria Legal Aid. Louise, thanks for joining me.
Thanks Rob, it's great to be here.
Well Louise, you've worked in a range of very senior public service positions, both state and federal, including legal advisor to a number of ministers, state and federal, former Deputy CEO of the National Disability Insurance Agency, CEO of the Victorian Responsible Gambling Foundation. I could go on and on. I guess the question is, were all these diverse jobs really a lead up to the gig you have now as CEO of Victoria Legal Aid?
Well, I certainly think it's important to say that this is a great gig to be in, so it's terrific to be here at Victoria Legal Aid, and you yourself would know this, Rob, because that was your beginnings, wasn't it, working in Queensland in legal aid and legal aid services. So for me, really the connection between all these different roles is a really strong focus on rights, and in this instance legal rights, but also on disadvantage and vulnerability. And what I love about the roles I've had, and this role included, is that it gives you a chance to look not just at people's legal problems, but all the other intersections that create complexities in people's lives. So whether they be family violence or mental illness or housing problems or employment problems, legal aid really is still a lot about poverty law, and it's about people who struggle in various parts of their lives, which sometimes leads them into difficulty with the criminal justice system, for example. So for me, this is a strong role that accords with my values, that means I can commit to doing something that I think is very much in the public good. A strong legal aid system is very important for the justice system overall, to ensure that people can be defended when they need to be, or their rights can be advocated when they need to be. And importantly, Rob, as you would know, legal aid does a whole lot of law reform and strategic advocacy. So a really good example recently is the robo-debt advocacy that we've done. We've taken a matter to the federal court in sort of challenging the Centrelink method of using algorithms to actually assess people's debt. These are great pieces of work to be involved in, and I feel very privileged to be here at Legal Aid.
Well, you started out as a young student, if you can remember way back then, Louise.
So cheeky.
With a Bachelor of Social Work.
You would have started longer back than I did.
Boom, boom.
Right.
You started off Bachelor of Social Work, then you moved into law. Can you tell our students a bit about your days studying as a student, and why did you actually combine law and social work together with arts and health law? How did that combination come together?
Yes, so in my 20s I did my undergraduate degree as a social worker, and in those days you could pick whether you wanted to do policy and community work or casework. I very much picked the policy and community work side of social work, and that was sort of a wonderful sort of intro to working with communities, with individuals, to try and create situations of reform in lots of ways. But the more I did that work, the more I saw the intersection of social problems and legal problems and how the two sort of fitted together. And I became increasingly interested in law as a vehicle for social reform and change. I probably really thought about the law as a pretty conservative beast when I was a younger person, but I saw the ways in which law could be used to really improve people's circumstances, not just for the individual, but for communities and groups of people as well. And I think in this space, working for community legal centres and certainly places like Legal Aid, but more generally, you can really get a sense of what difference the sort of work that those organisations do can make to people's well-being.
Well, at the Centre for Innovative Justice, we embrace a multidisciplinary approach where we have lawyers and law students and social workers and social work students, and soon to be financial counsellors and financial counselling students, all working in a multidisciplinary way to provide wraparound services for people. You also embrace a multidisciplinary approach here at Legal Aid. Do you think that's the way of the future, multidisciplinary approaches?
Absolutely. I mean, I think our core is legal assistance and defending people in relation to their legal problems. But around that totally is an appreciation of all the other things can impact on the sort of issues and problems that people have. We have set up specific non-legal advocacy programs here, particularly related to mental illness and also family dispute resolution. And I think they're important things because often people want legal advice or legal information, but that legal information doesn't necessarily have to be given by a lawyer. It's a real way of, it's a complementary way of working where different professionals can come together and offer quite holistic ways of addressing people's needs. And I think that's what community expects, certainly what individuals benefit from most. And I think more increasingly that's what governments want too. They want that sort of holistic approach.
So you're the first female CEO of Legal Aid. Have you seen many changes in the profession for women as you've progressed through the profession, and have you had to break down any glass ceilings as far as your career is concerned?
Well, I think as a feminist we can never sort of underestimate the fact that we need to continue to advocate for the needs and rights of women. I think I'm one of the luckier group really. I grew up in the area when tertiary education was free, so that was under the reforms particularly of the Whitlam government and subsequent governments, so I've benefited a lot from the removing of barriers. For example, someone like me may have become a teacher in another life because that you could get a scholarship and that's what you could do. So I've definitely benefited from, the education revolution for women that encourages women to do whatever they would want to do. I think it's a bit harder now because of some of the financial arrangements, but certainly those sorts of opportunities in the 70s really benefited women of my era, as you've already pointed out, a bit older. But I think we can never sit back and pretend that the glass ceiling doesn't continually need cracking. And I myself have had numerous examples where I feel that, not in a big way, but if I'd been male, perhaps an outcome would have been slightly different. Not for me personally, but perhaps for something that I've been involved in a more of a community sense. And I think we need to be mindful of that. I think it's fantastic the way government, and particularly the current government and certainly the government that you were involved in, really did understand that boards make better decisions if they've got diverse representation, that the judiciary is more potent if it has a diversity of people who are there bringing their intelligence to the individual decisions. It's a no-brainer that when we're inclusive, particularly around gender, that results in a better community for all of us. And if I think about the way in which parental leave, which originally was something that women were arguing for, but also increasingly benefits men as well, they're good things because it's about inclusion and participation much more thoroughly. But we can never forget the suffragettes and what they fought for, and that things that can be won can also easily be lost. So I think it's really important that we do that. I love being the first female CEO of Victoria Legal Aid. It's great to follow some terrific sort of male counterparts in Bevan Warner and Tony Parsons, himself now a magistrate. Bevan gone on to launch housing. So it is an important organisation for really holding tight to the need for social change and law reform.
So finally, we've got students who are watching this who are deciding where their career might take them, a bit nervous about their job prospects, obviously. You're now one of the most senior people in the legal profession. What one or two bits of advice would you give our students who are studying hard, a bit nervous about their career opportunities? What one or two bits of advice would you give them?
So I think for people studying law, the biggest piece of advice I could give is don't just think of it as a single track. There's so many things you could do with a law degree now. And I think, going into private practice is one type of thing that you can do that is terrific, but there is just so many wider opportunities, great jobs in government, in my view, and the non-government sector, the community sector, for people who have legal skills and that analytical ability that studying law brings. But also for social workers. I mean, we have in this organisation, while 75% of people here are lawyers, I should probably expect 25% aren't, and a significant number of those are, for example, social workers, and they really help us think differently about things. And they, for example, those examples I gave of dispute resolution and family dispute resolution, and also the mental illness work, it's important to have these different sorts of perspectives in order to really address the whole of people's problems. So I think people should, if they're students, whatever they're in, they should keep their mind open. Many undergraduate and graduate degrees are sort of steps into something, and really seek out opportunities and put yourself out there to try different things rather than just narrowing the track that you're on. And I'm sure people will find some great work out there, lots to be done.
Well, there you go, students. That's some great advice. Multidisciplinary approaches are certainly the way to go, and you are doing the right course. Law will open up many, many doors for you, and that's certainly the advice that Louise has given us, and it's certainly what's happened to Louise Glanville. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, Rob. It's been terrific.